Well, we're joined right now by Billy Spencer, who's been a caddy for some well-known players on the PGA Tour, including Daniel Berger, Russell Henley, CT Pan, Sung J M, Steven Yeager, and others. One, how's life treating you these days, and who are you working with?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, everything's good. Life is good. I'm actually not working for anyone right now. I got a son that is graduated or had just graduated high school, so I wanted to be home for that. And then some athletics that he's trying to wrap up before the school year ends. And so I'm taking a little bit of time off, but I will be back hopefully in the next few weeks, ready to kind of finish up the second half of the season.
So take us back to the beginning, how you ended up being a caddy. I know you're from the Toronto area, grew up playing hockey. So how'd you end up kind of where you're at right now?
I grew up in Aurora. I worked at a club called Beacon Hall. We had a caddy program there. I ran sort of the back shop bag room, but I had caddy during the week, just for a couple different members. I really enjoyed it. And the Canadian tour used to play at Diamondback, which is actually where my dad was a member, and I would go out there and play a bunch. I mean, long story short, they needed caddies. I sent a bunch over from Beacon Hall. They needed more. I decided to go over for myself, and I got paired up with a random player. It was Jason Bone. We hit it off, same age more or less. Hit it off that week, had a good week. Good enough that I went to Hamilton. Is it Heron Point, I think? Well, I went with him the next week there, stayed in touch. Next summer rolled around, same sort of thing. Worked a few weeks, won one of the tournaments, and yeah, I mean, long story short, I mean, 3 years later, he was on tour, and I was with him on tour, and I mean, played a little bit on the web, kind of did the top 25, and you know, sort of processed through to get your card out there, and won a couple of times, lost in some playoffs, got his PGA Tour card after maybe 12 web.com events, and starting in 03, we were on tour, and I've been there ever since.
Cool. I grew up playing Aurora Highlands, actually, if you're familiar with that
I,
course.
I've played there 1,000 times. Lots of
Nice.
2 irons back in the day. Lots of
Yeah.
houses and 2 irons.
That's right. Yeah, I loved it
Yeah.
there. So, I have to imagine that, when you partner with a player, chemistry becomes really important. How quickly can you tell if you have that chemistry, and who are some of the guys you work with that you were like in lockstep with?
Yeah, obviously it's important. I think as a caddy, you can tell, you got to do your research though. You have to know where they come from and what they're obviously, speaking to one of their former caddies would help you kind of get a little bit inside knowledge about, the way their mind works or what they expect. Are they intense? Are they low key? Are they detailed? Are they just looking for a number? Are they big win guys, not big win guys? So you can get a lot of those answers from former caddies. And then obviously it's important your first couple of days out there with them, ask them what they need and let them tell you, what they expect, what they like, what they don't like. Obviously, it's a little bit of trial and error. You can't cover everything, in the 3 or 4 days before the first tournament starts. And, obviously something's going to happen where, you're going to say something or do something that would be okay for the last player you worked for. But a true pro would say, hey, man, that's great. I appreciate it, but I don't need that information. And then, a good caddy would, take that to note, and that would be the end of it. And you would just move on from there.
So, any one or two guys you work with that you're like, we had really good chemistry for a good string there.
Yeah, no. I mean, I worked for Sungjae for 2 years. That's a tough job, a really tough job. But I felt like, his agent, who was also his translator, really helped me understand sort of what his expectations were, and we kept it very simple. And I thought that the results sort of spoke for themselves, but we weren't really trying to make it any more complicated than it really was. Fronts, pins, here's your wind, and this, and he would pull a club, and if I thought it was good, I wouldn't say another word. And if I thought he was, out of his mind for pulling what he was pulling, then we'd have a discussion with it. And that was about it. But yeah, I mean, most of the guys I've worked for, I've had good chemistry with. I mean, I don't feel like I'm a tough person to get along with, so I can kind of adapt. And I've done it long enough now that I understand there's our multiple different personalities with these players. So as long as you understand, what they're looking for, if you're good at what you do, I think you can really make it work.
So we're joined by Billy Spencer. You can find him on Twitter at Spencer Caddie and the number 17. And so walk me through a typical working day for a caddy. So for example, the Memorial's coming up this weekend in Ohio. Are you responsible for booking travel and accommodations, or is that something that's done by the player and their reps? Like how sort of autonomous are you when it comes to traveling and that kind of stuff?
So for the North American guys playing in North America, typically we're responsible for all of our own travel, hotels, rental cars, um, airfare, and whatever. It changes a little bit for the Euros, or even the Japanese guys, because they're traveling abroad so much. A lot of those situations, that travel is taken care of by the team. For us, typically when we do go overseas, and not overseas like to the Caribbean, but overseas to Japan or to Europe, typically that would also be taken care of by the pro. Accommodations, sometimes we would just try to rent a house as a group of caddies. Sometimes the pro is bringing over a manager, maybe a trainer or a stretch guy. In that case, that the player might rent a home and have a room for you there. But domestically speaking, yeah, we're responsible for all of our own airfare, flights, hotels, rental cars. So for the Memorial, it would all depend on the week prior. If you're playing the week before, typically Monday's your day off / travel day, unless you can get out on Sunday night. If you haven't played the week before, you would typically fly in on a Sunday night late or very early Monday morning, walk the course. Memorial's funny because it's always changing. Some places never change. Memorial changes every year. So you'd have to go out. Jack's probably messed around with a tee here and a par 3 here and put a tree in someplace and move the bunker over. So you got to go kind of understand, what part of the golf course has changed and try to do the best work that you can. And then Tuesday morning rolls around. That's usually practice. Hopefully your players in the Pro-Am, most of the Pro-Ams are only 9 holes. So a lot of the players have adopted sort of their routine of playing 9 holes on Tuesday, and it's the 9 you're not playing on Wednesday. So then you get to see your second 9 on Wednesday in the Pro-Am setting. Obviously, these guys, most of the guys I work for have played the tour long enough to, not really overthink the practice round. They just want to see all 18 holes over the course of 2 days, and then Thursday's go time, and we kind of go from there.
Well, you stole my thunder on the next question, walking me through a work day. You did a great job of doing it there. So we're joined by Billy Spencer. You can find him on Twitter at Spencer Caddie and the number 17. So, everyone wants to know about the majors. You've had the chance to caddy the Masters. How many times now?
4 times at the Masters.
4 times. I mean, just walk us through that experience. The first time kind of going, to Augusta National, just your thoughts kind of just being at the holy grail of golf, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's by far the best tournament we play all year. It's I don't want to say we get treated poorly the other 35 tournaments a year, but they roll out the red carpet for everybody at Augusta, players, caddies, families. We have our own building that's on the range. It's the only tournament on tour where the players actually have to come to us, and usually it's us waiting on them. And that at Augusta, they come to the range, which is where we're hanging out waiting. It's fantastic. It's a lot of work. It's a long week. It's a tough walk. The course, again, it's always changing. Some of it's publicized, which is fine. Some of it is not publicized. So it's up to us to go out there year to year and try to notice maybe a subtle change here. Maybe they flatten a part of a green out where they can put a pin where they've never had one before. So stuff like that, where, experience helps, and doing it as a group, usually trying to grab another guy or 2 or 3 and go out there and try to, obviously, 8 eyes is better than 2, and to be able to see if we've noticed any sort of subtle changes, mostly around the greens. Most of the time they move a tee or lengthen a hole, they'll make a statement about that. But I know last year they flattened out the right side of 13. You could never put a pin sort of middle right, and we noticed it when we were out walking, and sure enough, first day, boom, there was the pin. So, and that's stuff that they wouldn't say, publicly. And so, yeah, stuff like that is very important, and that's what makes Augusta unique. In that, that course knowledge really helps, and every time you go back, you learn something more, you see something different. It's probably why I think maybe one first timers ever won there. It's just a difficult place to sort of grasp with a few practice rounds, even if you had gone out, weeks prior to play. It just changes so much. from the beginning of the week till the end of the week. And to be able to be successful there, I think it helps to be able to have seen all those different conditions over a number of tournaments before you can actually figure how to put it all together.
Any memorable pairings from Augusta, in your the 4 times you've been there?
I remember the first time we were there, the first hole's tough. The guy I was working for could not hit it over the right bunkers. We were playing with Carl Pedersen. It was his first trip to Augusta, and John Daly was our third. And obviously, our Bone and Carl were both, I mean, very nervous, and they both hit these sort of, skanky heel cuts out there into the upslope, and we had probably 200 plus to the green, and Daly gets up there and he's like, well, I've been at Hooters all night, so I'm not sure where this one's going. And he just, he put the peg in the ground and smashed it and hit it 330 down the middle. And, he kept it loose. It was great for our guys. It was the year that he made like a 15 on 15. He kept hitting it in the water. And we were standing there. We're not sure what we're like, what's this guy doing? And he just kept doing it. But it helped our guys. Our guys, actually, we both had pretty good weeks, and it kind of kept it loose. And he knew that they were, pretty nervous, pretty timid being around there. And he kept it loose, and he was great to be around with. Yeah.
You mentioned the Hooters. I've been to Augusta, and I find it funny because the street, the course is obviously this majestic kind of, but the town itself is really just kind of like this one strip, and that's all I remember is seeing the Hooters. I mean, your thoughts on just the town of Augusta itself?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I was there, I was like, I can't believe this golf course is in this town. I mean, it's a Washington Road. It's a one street town. 20 kind of separates it. Of course, is a little bit south, but over the last 20 or 25 years since I was there the first time, Augusta National has done a pretty nice job. I mean, they've bought up acres and acres and acres, building homes, expanding parking, cleaning up some of the more undesirable areas. I mean, you don't have to go far away from that strip to get back into what it used to be, but that whole area now, Augusta, the members and the board have done a nice job of really, for 1 week a year, maybe two, if you a week and a half, if you include the girls, the weekend before we start, they've done a really nice job. And they've got, plans for the future that, are pretty interesting, building homes for the players so that the players aren't having to rent homes, and expanding parking and expanding the fan experience. And it's the best tournament. I tell all my buddies and stuff, if you've never been and you ever get a chance to go, you just got to figure out a way to make it happen. It's the best week of the year. There's no doubt.
No doubt. We're joined by Billy Spencer. You can find him on Twitter at Spencer Caddie and the number 17. Well, next major coming up, U.S. Open at Pinehurst 2. Any previous experience working that course?
Yeah, I was there whenever we played there last, maybe 14, 13-ish. It's cool. It's a cool place. No rough, elevated greens, lots of runoffs, like the tabletop sort of upside down bowls on the greens. The ball can roll forever if you roll it off of a green, and no rough. It's kind of fairway to the native sort of beachy light fescue stuff. It plays really firm and fast, or it did when I was there. Trying to think I think Martin Keimer won, and he never chipped. He putted it from everywhere. Which is, you can do it. I mean, you can easily do it. I think if it's wet, it would be a little more difficult. We played it really firm and fast, but it'll be a good test. It's a cool golf course, a lot of history. The USGA is sort of 50-50 hit and miss when it comes to these tournaments, but the fact that they've been to Pinehurst, recently, I think that bodes well for the setup. And I think the last time we were there is the first time we played 1 week, and the girls played their U.S. Open the following week on the same golf course. So that was a pretty cool experience. The girls were warming up practicing on Saturday and Sunday when we were there, kind of finishing up the tournament. So, but yeah, it's a special place. It's a good tournament. It'll be a good setup for sure.
Biggest mistake you've ever made as a caddy?
Huh. I mean, I've never missed a tee time, and I've never gone to the tee with more than 14 clubs. Those are pretty much the two things you can't do. So far, knock on wood, I've been good for that. I can't think of anything that really no one else has done. I mean, you're going to make mistakes. I've gotten the wrong tee before, on a Thursday, Friday, when you think you're going off at 7:30 off of 10, but you're really going off of 1, and then you show up to 10 and it's a cart ride away. I've done that. Yeah, once. I've only done it once. Hopefully I don't ever do it again, but that's a little bit of a panic because you get there. I was working for a guy that kind of cut it close all the time. And so we were cutting it close. And then obviously we get to the wrong tee and it's, a 6-minute cart ride to the other tee. We were fortunate that there was an official there and drove us over and everything was good. But yeah, I mean, that's probably, you know, we got away with it, but I mean, another minute or two and it would have cost us two. So that's probably the closest I've been to making a sort of a fatal error out there.
So how challenging is a breakup with a player?
Um, if the player's a pro, like a legit real pro, and knows how to do it, it's fine. They do it the right way, and you can sense it as a caddy. I mean, I've been canned twice in 21 years. Most of the time it's me doing the changing, which that doesn't always sit well with them. They get their feelings hurt a little bit. Especially if you go to work for someone else after them that they think is not as good of a player as them. But working for a real pro, if they do it the right way and the real pros know how to do it, then it should be fine. You should be able to see them the next week. And it's the cost of doing business. I mean, it's no different than any other sport. You can't fire the whole team, so you fire the coach or the GM, and that's sort of the way it goes. He's not gonna fire his agent or his teacher or his trainer or his wife because he's played poor for 6 weeks. So you're on the chopping block and you can sense it. And sometimes it's best if you can sense it. Maybe you start the conversation instead of it being awkward out there. Say, hey man, I know you're not playing great. Maybe if we took a bit of a break, maybe that could spark things. Kind of let them off the hook a little bit. Then, if it's done the right way, then there shouldn't be any animosity. But I've heard of, obviously, not everyone does it the right way. So you can cause some tension. It can be a little bit of a gong show sometimes. But hopefully the guys understand that we're just trying to do we're trying to do our best, and we're hoping that they play well because obviously that determines how much we make. So we're not out there trying to sabotage them. And I think that most of the guys understand that.
It's like in the movie Jerry Maguire, Bob Sugar, who's Jane Moore, the agent. It's not show friends, it's show business. That's
Exactly.
The fitting line there. So joined by Billy Spencer. Obviously the big hot topic over the past LIV. Would you ever caddy for a LIV player if the opportunity presented itself?
100%. Yeah. I mean, make more, work less. I mean, why not? Who wouldn't? Yeah. I mean, I'd be a no-brainer. I'd do it in a heartbeat. I mean, not actually working now. I've been out for probably 4 weeks. Yeah. I mean, if I got a call from a LIV guy tomorrow, I'd pack my stuff. I'd be gone.
Nice.
It's a no-brainer. I mean, I know guys that have gone. I mean, I know guys that have gone right at the beginning. And then I know a couple good friends, really good friends that went just a few weeks ago to work for a couple guys. So yeah, I mean, it's the team aspect's pretty cool. I've done the same thing for 23 years. It'd be kind of neat to see something different. Shotguns, 54 holes. You get to go to some places we've never been. It gets a little monotonous after a while. When you go to you got to go to Hartford the same year, same hotel, same golf course for 20 years. It'd be kind of neat to go somewhere different, play a new golf course, a new part of a new city or a different part of the city. Yeah, I mean, I would totally do it 100%.
Well, they're in Houston next week. Get on over there, shake a few hands. Maybe.
Yeah, it's funny. They're playing in Houston. It's a course we played for 15 years. So it's the old Redstone. It's the old Shell Houston Open golf course. So that's the funny part is I would have gone down to a place and I'm like, I've been here, already been here, already walked around this place 100 times, So
we're joined by Billy Spencer. So who are some of the guys you've looked up to and respected as far as, players or caddies, during your time? Some of the guys maybe you've borrowed a few ideas from or just kind of like how they handle themselves.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, a couple of close friends of mine, they'd been out there just a little bit longer than me. They're probably in their 30 plus years of experience. Brian Smith, he works for Zach Johnson. He's been someone that I could kind of lean on a little bit. He's turned into a very close friend. Mike Cowan, Fluff, he's somebody that I've looked up to. Again, another guy that's become a pretty close friend. It's funny though, 23 years into it, I mean, most of the guys that I looked up to, they're gone. They've retired. They've gone to the senior tour. And now it seems like our group, Brennan Little, probably my closest friend out there, works for Gary Woodland now. We're sort of that group of guys that the younger guys are coming up and going, oh man, this guy's been at it for 20 years or 30 years. This guy's won majors. This guy's won, President's Cups or Ryder Cups. I'll ask them questions. That feels like that's kind of where we're at. Whereas we've sort of unintentionally become sort of the veterans. There aren't many. I mean, Mike's still hanging around and Smitty's around, but there aren't many guys that have, done it for more than 25 or 30 years. But yeah, that's a good question. I've never been asked that before.
Is there any player caddy relationship like over the years that's made you laugh? Like these two guys carry on like an old married couple. Anyone, that maybe a player caddy like that are notorious, like these guys are, wait till you get a load of these two.
I mean, yeah, Jordan and Greller. I mean, that's kind of, that's the first one that kind of comes to mind. Phil with Jim for all those years. But I mean, ultimately in that situation, Phil did whatever he wanted to do anyways. Jim had no chance. I mean, he just carried the bag and had the pom-poms out and was hoping for the best. And I mean, had some input, of course, but ultimately when it came down to it, Phil was going to do exactly what Phil wanted to do. Whereas with Jordan and Mike could actually influence Jordan to make a decision, and he does a lot of times. So, and I think that's what makes our, we don't get asked a lot out there to help. But the one time that we do in a tournament, it's usually pretty pivotal. And that's when you can really sort of, add your value to the group or to the team. If the guy's playing good, they're not playing good because we're doing a great job. They're playing good because they're playing good. It's when they're not playing good or things start to speed up for them, a little bit of pressure, a little bit of heat, and now they're looking for someone to make, a good, smart decision and help them along the way. That's where we come into play. So when they shoot 62, it wouldn't matter. They could have been in a cart. They were going to shoot 62. They could have had their kid caddy. They were going to shoot 62. But to turn a 74 into a 72, that's where we can really help them out for sure.
That's awesome. So we're getting up against it here with time, Billy. So I wanted to ask, obviously, the big news of the week, Grayson Murray's passing. Just wanted to know if you had any relationships with him and had that news affect you.
Yeah, it was terrible news. Yeah, he was a good friend of mine, huge hockey fan. So we would go to a lot of games on the road, huge Canes fan. Always had a fun, kind of roughing me up for the Leafs and the way that they used to, rise and fall. And the Canes were always sort of steady. Great player. We actually played with him the first 2 days in Hawaii this year when he won. And he was, he had sort of a troubled career. He had a good heart, a huge heart, a great heart. But he was his own worst enemy. And a lot of guys are like that. And he started the tournament, I think he was 3 over after 4. And I said to my player at the time, I'm like, man, this could go one of two ways. He could be out of here at the turn and that would be the end of it. We'd be a twosome for the next 27 holes, or he's going to turn this around and he's going to get going. And I mean, he turned that round into an under par round. He played great on Friday. And I mean, Sunday afternoon, he made that 40-footer to win the golf tournament. And I don't think he would have done that when he was a rookie on tour. I think he would have mailed it in. So as a player, he had really grown and matured. And it's tough to see. It was tough to hear. And, obviously our thoughts are with their families and friends and stuff, but he was a good dude, man. Like I wouldn't have anything bad to say about him. He was generous with a huge heart and a big hockey fan, and he was fun to be around.
Awesome. Appreciate that. And so lastly, we're joined by Billy Spencer here. So let's talk about your son, Zach. I know he's headed to Indiana State to play baseball. Is it next year?
Yeah, next year. Yeah.
Let's talk about the pride, you have seeing him succeed like that.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's he's been lucky to be a part of some really competitive, professional looking teams as he's growing up here in Dallas. They don't mess around with baseball here. Football is obviously number one, but baseball is a close second. And it's been fun to watch him progress from, a T-ball, not sure if he wanted to do it to all of a sudden kind of getting the itch. And now, He's been lucky enough to be on a high school team here that is it's ranked #1 in the state, and has been for the better part of 3 years. And he's been a big part of that, him and a couple other seniors this year, and a couple of the guys that graduated last year really sort of set the tone, and these guys have sort of followed in their footsteps. And it's amazing to see, these kids and how they work. It's like a job, they're at the school before school starts working out, and then they put their full day at school in, and then they're back out, in the afternoon working on their skill, practicing. And it's fun to watch. And they're pretty deep into the playoffs again for the 3rd year in a row. So, we'll see. They got to win this series this week, and then that'll get us to state. And, we'll see if they can't crack off a championship this year.
Awesome. Well, hey, Bill, I can't thank you enough for your time. Really appreciate it. And
Absolutely.
hopefully let's do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely.